The Galactic Council had watched Earth for 300 years. They observed the small blue planet spinning quietly in an unremarkable corner of the Milky Way. The 12 ruling species of the galaxy had a simple system. They found young civilizations, studied them, and when those civilizations became useful, they claimed them. Some species became workers, others became soldiers, a few became food. This was the natural order of the universe, and no species had ever challenged it successfully. When the Council finally decided to claim Earth, they expected the same outcome they had seen 1,000 times before. Humanity was young. Humanity was divided. Humanity had only recently discovered how to leave their own planet. The Empire, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, volunteered to handle the conquest. Their fleet admiral, a towering reptilian creature named, promised the Council that Earth would fall within 3 standard rotations. The first ships appeared above Earth's major cities on a Tuesday morning. They were massive vessels, each one larger than a mountain, blocking out the sun and casting shadows across entire nations. Broadcast his message to every screen, every radio, and every device on the planet. His words were translated into every human language simultaneously. "People of Earth," he declared, his voice cold and confident, "your world now belongs to the Empire. You will surrender your governments, your resources, and your freedom. Resistance is not possible. You are children compared to us. We have conquered 10,000 worlds. You are simply the next." The transmission ended, waited for the panic, the chaos, the immediate surrender that always followed such announcements. He had done this many times. He knew exactly what would happen next. But something strange occurred instead. The humans did not run. They did not hide. They did not beg for mercy. Instead, within 6 hours of the announcement, every nuclear weapon on Earth was aimed at the sky. Every military force on the planet stopped fighting each other. Old enemies became sudden allies. Nations that had been at war for decades shared intelligence and coordinates. The entire human species, for the first time in its history, united against a common enemy. Found this amusing at first. What could primitive weapons do against shields? What could small human aircraft do against ships that had destroyed entire star systems? He ordered his forces to begin the standard occupation procedure. Landing craft descended toward the major capitals. Ground troops prepared to establish control. The first wave of soldiers landed in what humans called New York City. There were 5,000 of them, each one standing 8 feet tall, covered in thick scales, armed with plasma rifles that could burn through steel. They expected terrified civilians. They expected easy conquest. What they found was something else entirely. The humans had prepared. In the 6 hours since the announcement, the military had evacuated civilians from key areas. Buildings had been turned into fortresses. Underground tunnels had become supply routes. And ordinary humans, people who had never held weapons before, had armed themselves and joined the defense. There were teachers with rifles, construction workers with explosives, grandmothers with shotguns. The first soldier to step off his landing craft was shot 17 times before he hit the ground. The next 100 were met with a wall of gunfire so intense that their shields overloaded. The humans had figured out in just 6 hours that shields needed time to recharge between impacts, so they simply never stopped shooting. Received reports of the massacre with disbelief. 5,000 elite soldiers destroyed by primitives. He ordered a second wave 10 times larger. 50,000 warriors descended on cities across the planet. The result was the same. Humans died, yes, many of them, but they kept fighting. They fought from rooftops and basements. They fought from sewers and subway tunnels. They drove trucks filled with explosives into enemy positions. They crashed civilian aircraft into command posts. The human generals had studied tactics from the initial invasion data. They adapted within hours. When they used thermal imaging to find hidden soldiers, humans started fires everywhere to mask their heat signatures. When they jammed radio communications, humans used messengers on motorcycles. When they sent armored vehicles, humans dug pits and filled them with burning fuel. By the end of the first day, they had lost 200,000 soldiers, could not understand it. These creatures were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak, but they fought like nothing he had ever seen. They did not retreat. They did not negotiate. They simply kept coming, wave after wave, replacing their fallen with new volunteers who seemed eager to die for their world. On the second day, humanity launched its counterattack. The world space agencies had worked through the night. They had taken every rocket, every satellite launch vehicle, and every experimental spacecraft and modified them for war. The weapons they created were crude by galactic standards, but they were effective. Nuclear missiles designed for targets on Earth were to strike ships in orbit. Kinetic projectiles, simple metal rods, were launched at incredible speeds toward vessels. The first human missile struck flagship directly. The nuclear explosion was small compared to weapons, but the shield was unprepared for such a direct, focused attack. A hole burned through 3 decks. Hundreds of crew members died instantly. For the first time in his long career, felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. He called for reinforcements. The Empire sent more ships, but the journey would take time and humans did not wait. They attacked constantly, day and night, from every direction. They boarded ships using captured landing craft. They hacked into computer systems using methods so primitive that the advanced security software did not recognize them as threats. A human teenager, sitting in his bedroom, managed to access the navigation system of a destroyer and crashed it into the moon. The Galactic Council watched these events with growing horror. They had expected a quick conquest. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. A species that should have been enslaved was winning, not just surviving but actively winning. They who had never lost a war were being pushed back by creatures who had discovered less than a century ago. On the 5th day, made a decision that would haunt him forever. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat. The mighty empire, conquerors of 10,000 worlds, fled from a single planet. His last transmission to Earth was short. "This is not over," he promised. But humanity was not satisfied with survival. They wanted more. Within a year, humans had reverse-engineered technology. Within 5 years, they had built their own fleet of warships. Within 10 years, they had developed weapons that made plasma rifles look like toys. They had made a critical mistake. They had shown humanity that the galaxy was full of hostile species with advanced technology, and humanity responded the way it always responded to threats. It prepared for war. The first human warship to leave the solar system was called the Defiant. Its captain was a woman named Sarah, whose parents had died in the initial invasion. She led a fleet of 100 vessels toward space. The Empire had rebuilt its forces. They had 5,000 ships waiting. They were confident that this time, without the advantage of their home planet, humans would be easy to destroy. They were wrong. Human ships were smaller than vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Human weapons were less powerful individually, but humans had learned to fire in coordinated swarms that overwhelmed enemy defenses. Human crews were smaller, but they fought with a ferocity that they could not match. The Battle of Prime lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Empire was in ruins. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking down at the conquered. She broadcast a message to the galaxy, to every species in the Galactic Council. "You watched us for 300 years, she said. "You saw us fight each other, you saw our wars and our cruelty, and you thought that made us weak. You were wrong. Every war we fought taught us. Every conflict made us stronger. We learned how to survive against impossible odds. We learned how to adapt, to improvise, to never give up. You thought you were coming to claim sheep. You found wolves instead." The message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Species that had planned their own invasions of Earth canceled them immediately. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in 10,000 years, they discussed the possibility of diplomacy with a species they had intended to enslave. But humanity was not interested in diplomacy, not yet. Over the next decade, human fleets swept across the galaxy. They did not conquer for resources or power. They conquered for justice. Every species that had participated in the slave trade was punished. Every world that had been claimed by force was liberated. The oppressed races of the galaxy, the ones who had served as workers and soldiers and food, found themselves suddenly free. And they remembered who had freed them. When humanity finally agreed to join the Galactic Council, it was not as a member, it was as a leader. The old ruling species, the ones who had once looked down on Earth as a primitive backwater, now bent their knees to human ambassadors. The slave trade ended. The conquest of young civilization stopped. A new era began, an era of peace and cooperation, enforced by human warships that patrolled the stars. Admiral lived long enough to see his empire fall. He spent his final years in a human prison, writing his memoirs. His last entry, found after his death, contained a single paragraph. "We made a mistake," he wrote. "We looked at humans and saw only their weaknesses, their short lives, their soft bodies, their constant fighting among themselves. We did not understand that these things were not weaknesses at all. They were training. Every human is born knowing that their life is short, so they live with an urgency we cannot match. Their bodies are soft, so they learn to build tools and weapons to protect themselves. They fight among themselves constantly, so every human is a warrior by nature. We came to claim cattle. We found demons instead. The galaxy will never make this mistake again." He was right. The galaxy never forgot the lesson humanity taught them. And somewhere, on a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the Milky Way, children grew up hearing stories of the days when aliens came to conquer Earth. They learned that their ancestors had refused to surrender. They learned that humans, when pushed back harder than anyone could imagine. And they knew, with absolute certainty, that if any species ever threatened their world again, the result would be the same. Humanity would fight. Humanity would win, and the galaxy would learn once again that some species are simply too stubborn to conquer.